If you look at an English dictionary from, say, 1995, the word cloud meant, condensed water vapor floating up in the atmosphere.
Right, just actual weather.
Exactly, weather. And a mouse was just a rodent. A web was this sticky trap spun by a spider.
Yeah, the things you clear out of your garage.
Totally. And if you told someone that you spent the whole weekend surfing, they would assume you were out at the beach catching waves, sitting in a dark basement illuminated by some heavy cathode ray tube monitor.
Yeah, staring at a screen for 48 hours straight.
Like, in the span of just a single generation, we have completely rewritten human language just to survive our new digital reality.
It's an unprecedented linguistic hijacking, really. I mean, we didn't just invent a few new slang words here and there.
No, not at all.
We fundamentally repurposed our core vocabulary to try and make sense of this invisible, intangible architecture that suddenly just dictated our entire lives.
And that is exactly the mission for our deep dive today. Because you listening to this right now, you navigate this architecture every single second of your day.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone does.
But we rarely start to actually examine the words we're using to do it. And the source material, this framework we're examining today, is just brilliant.
It really is. It's so structured.
It's essentially this linguistic curriculum that maps out the vocabulary of technology, but it does it in peers. Like starting from the absolute baseline everyday words and escalating all the way up to highly advanced, almost existential discourse.
And the aha moment here is realizing that this isn't just some glossary of tech terms. It's not just a vocabulary list for a quiz. It's an actual psychological and sociological map.
Right.
By tracking how the language evolves from these simple physical actions to these incredibly complex abstract concepts, we can see the exact trajectory of humanity's deepening relationship with machines.
And sometimes a terrifying relationship.
Ugh, completely terrifying. We are literally watching our own cognitive evolution, our own anxieties play out in syntax.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the progression in the source material is stunning. We have to start at the foundational tier, which the framework classifies as the A2 level.
Right, the ground floor.
The absolute ground floor, the baseline hardware, and the fundamental verbs we use to interact with it.
We're talking about the vocabulary of everyday devices here.
Yeah, smartphones.
Exactly. Smartphones, laptops, desktop computers, tablets, smartwatches, smart TVs.
All the glowing rectangles.
All of them. And the verbs are equally basic. Turn on, turn off, charge, call, text, send an email.
Use an app, go online, connect to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. The baseline of digital existence.
What immediately strikes me about these specific verbs is the raw power dynamic they imply, like turn on, turn off.
Mm-hmm.
It's entirely binary, and it places the human completely at the center of the universe.
What's fascinating here is the illusion of utter mastery. Because at this foundational level, the language we use frames technology purely as a subservient physical tool.
A tool, right?
You are the master.
Mm-hmm.
The device is just the object you act upon. You turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you are finished extracting whatever utility you need from it, you turn it off.
Like it has no will of its own.
Exactly. It's a completely transactional, one-way relationship.
It reminds me of learning the layout of a physical kitchen or a workshop. Like you learn what a pot is, you learn how to turn on a stove, you learn what a hammer is, you swing it, and when you're done, you put it away.
Put it right back in the drawer.
Right. The pot doesn't have agency. But wait, I want to push back on this idea of utter mastery right out of the gate.
Okay, go for it.
Is this foundational language actually giving us a false sense of security? Like, is it describing reality, or is it a psychological comfort blanket?
How do you mean?
Well, think about the phrase, my phone battery is low, I need to charge it. Grammatically, I am the subject, right? I am taking action.
You are the one doing the charging.
Right. But in reality, the device flashes this little red icon, and I immediately drop whatever I'm doing to scurry across the room and tether it to a wall.
Yeah, you panic.
I panic. I am the one responding to its commands, not the other way around.
You're touching on the exact paradox of this early vocabulary. The language is a comfort blanket. It explicitly masks the complex algorithms running beneath the surface.
It hides the reality.
It allows us to believe we are just operators of simple machinery. Because if we actually articulated what was happening, that we are basically tending to this digital symbiote that dictates our daily physical movements, it would be overwhelming. It would be terrifying.
So the language is deliberately lagging behind the reality of the relationship.
Deliberately, or maybe just organically. I mean, our brains evolved in physical environments, right?
Right, plains and forests.
Yeah, we understand physical tools. So when we encounter these complex algorithms, our first instinct is to just force them into a physical linguistic mold so we can understand them.
We dumb it down.
We spatialize it. Look at the directional spatial language we use at this baseline level for the internet. We talk about downloading files and uploading photos.
Down and up. It's highly directional.
Yeah.
We are applying the laws of physical gravity to a completely non-physical space.
Precisely. Uploading implies we are sending a piece of our data up to some ethereal higher plane.
The literal cloud.
The cloud. And downloading implies we are reaching into that ether and pulling something down into our physical possession.
Like grabbing an apple off a tree.
Right. It anchors the abstract digital process into our primate understanding of spatial geography. We need to feel like we can touch it.
And it gets even more physical when you look at how we describe navigating that space. The framework points out that we talk about browsing or surfing.
The navigation verbs.
Yeah, and think about the physical act of browsing. Like you're in a bookstore or a boutique. You're walking down these physical aisles, picking things up, looking at them, putting them back on the shelf.
It's a very leisurely concept.
Extremely leisurely. And it's entirely human-directed. You are strolling.
And surfing is perhaps the most revealing metaphor of all in this tier.
Oh man, surfing. Right, because surfing is gliding on the surface tension of this massive, powerful force of nature.
But you're on top of it.
But you, the surfer, you are the one balancing, making the choices, riding the wave.
But notice what the concept of surfing excludes. When you are surfing, you are actively avoiding the depths.
Wow. Yeah, you don't want to go under.
You are staying purely on the superficial layer. So the language of surfing the web, it subconsciously permits us to just ignore the terrifying abyss beneath the surface.
The abyss of what? The code?
The code, the data harvesting, the algorithmic tracking, these massive server farms consuming gigawatts of power somewhere in the desert.
We just don't look at it.
We're just happily skimming along the top. The baseline vocabulary insists that the technology is just this static, predictable ocean, and we are the intrepid explorers.
It's the ultimate illusion of the master-servant dynamic.
It really is.
Yeah.
But, as we know, tools are only subservient until they stop working.
Exactly. And that is the exact point where our linguistic framework forces a massive shift. Because when the tool stops working, or, and this is key, when it forces us to interact with other humans in ways we didn't anticipate, our baseline vocabulary completely fails us.
We don't have the words for it anymore.
Right. We have to adopt a whole new set of words just to describe the friction.
Which moves us into the intermediate tier of the source material, the B1 level. The explorer phase, if you will.
Okay, the B1 level.
We transition from those simple binary actions to troubleshooting and social integration.
Because when a tool works perfectly, it's basically invisible. You don't stare at the hammer, right? You stare at the nail.
Right, you're focused on the task.
But the second the internet drops or a screen locks up, the technology violently demands your attention. And the vocabulary of mechanical failure here, the words we use, they are incredibly evocative.
Very intense words.
Think about it. We say a computer is freezing. Or a system is crashing.
Notice the sudden escalation in severity there.
It's a huge jump.
We've gone from leisurely browsing and surfing to sudden catastrophic crashing.
It's aggressively violent. I want you, the listener, to really picture these metaphors. A crash is a kinetic event.
A physical impact.
Yeah, it's two physical objects colliding at high velocity. It results in twisted metal, shattered glass, physical trauma.
Assist, the whole thing.
But when a computer crashes, it literally just sits quietly on a desk.
Maybe the fan whirs a little bit louder.
Exactly. There is no physical collision. Or take freezing. That's a biological or chemical change of state due to extreme lethal temperatures. So why are we applying these intense, violent physical metaphors to silent software failures?
Because our bodies are experiencing a physiological response that actually matches those violent words.
Seriously?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. When you are working on a crucial document for 3 hours and you haven't saved and the screen suddenly becomes unresponsive, you experience a massive spike in cortisol.
Your stomach drops.
Your heart rate increases. You feel this sudden, terrifying loss of momentum. You cannot physically visualize a syntax error in a million lines of compiled code.
Right, it's invisible to us.
It is entirely beyond your sensory perception. But you can visualize a car crash.
So we physicalize the digital space because our primate brains can't comprehend a software failure without a tangible enemy.
Exactly. A crash communicates a sudden destruction of progress. A freeze communicates a terrifying, helpless paralysis.
That makes so much sense.
We borrow the language of physical trauma to accurately communicate our very real psychological frustration.
And the solutions we use to fix these traumas, they carry their own heavy weight. We talk about rebooting or restarting.
Which implies a total loss of progress.
Yeah, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. The friction costs us actual time and energy. But moving on in this B1 intermediate tier, it isn't just about things breaking. It's also where the language of social digital spaces emerges.
This is a crucial pivot in the framework. We start using words like creating an account, making a profile, following people, checking the feed.
Sharing articles, commenting.
Yeah, all of that social vocabulary.
Which completely abandons the whole tool metaphor we started with. Like, you don't create a profile for a microwave.
No, you don't.
You don't follow a toaster to see what it's up to today.
What's fascinating here is how the language explicitly demonstrates that we have moved from using a device to inhabiting a virtual environment.
Inhabiting.
We live there.
We do. We have transplanted the vocabulary of human society, community, reputation, interpersonal connection directly into the digital realm. The technology is no longer just a piece of hardware on your desk. It is the actual legitimate space where your social existence occurs.
And because it's the space where we live and work and interact, we naturally start judging it differently. The source material points out that this is where we start using evaluative adjectives.
The adjectives are key. We don't just say, the app is turned on. We say, the app is user-friendly. We say the connection is reliable. Or we complain that the hardware is outdated.
Those adjectives are incredibly revealing.
How so?
Because they expose our vulnerability. We evaluate the technology like a partner because we are now entirely dependent on these systems for our personal goals. We use them for our social existence. We use tablets for streaming. We use apps to track our sleep and fitness.
We are trusting the machine with our entertainment, our health, the most intimate details of our lives.
Precisely. So if a system is not user-friendly, it's not just a minor annoyance like a dull knife in the kitchen.
It's a real problem.
It's a direct barrier to your social or professional existence.
Yeah.
If your device is outdated, the implication is that you are being left behind by society.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Let's talk about user-friendly for a second. It's such a normalized phrase today, we don't even blink when we say it. But when you actually stop and look at it, it's deeply weird.
It implies personality.
Exactly. It implies that the technology has a disposition towards us. We are anthropomorphizing the code. We want the software to be kind to us. We want it to be our friend.
But if an environment can be friendly...
it can also be hostile.
Exactly. And that realization that the digital environment we inhabit is not just a passive tool, but a potentially hostile territory, that forces our language to evolve yet again.
It forces us to level up.
Right. We realize we are exposed, and we require a much more analytical, defensive vocabulary just to survive.
Which launches us directly into the analytical phase of this framework, the B2 level. And let me tell you, this is where the discourse gets noticeably heavier.
Like heavier.
We are no longer just complaining about a frozen screen or, posting a vacation photo to our feed. We are actively weighing the pros and cons of our entire digital existence. We are literally negotiating our safety.
We move from mere description of actions to critical analysis of impact. We start discussing the convenience and efficiency of technology, but we immediately have to contrast that with the drawbacks and the downsides.
And the most glaring downside brings us to the vocabulary of cybersecurity. This feels like a massive turning point in the psychological map we're talking about.
It is the turning point.
Suddenly, everyday citizens, not just IT professionals, but everyday people, have to know terms that sound like they belong in a classified military briefing.
Oh, yeah. We talk about protecting personal data, the absolute necessity of strong passwords.
The constant threat of being hacked.
And phishing scams.
Fake emails designed to steal your entire identity.
If you analyze the fundamental nature of this vocabulary, it is entirely about self-preservation. Words like cybersecurity, hacking, data breaches, they demonstrate a profound daily awareness of external predators. You are no longer just browsing a static, friendly web page. You are navigating a contested, dangerous landscape filled with invisible actors who want to exploit you.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The specific metaphors we choose for these threats. Take phishing. P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G.
Right. The spelling is a deliberate alteration.
It's deliberately misspelled, probably a relic from early hacker culture, but the root metaphor is glaringly obvious. You are the fish.
You are the prey.
The email sitting in your inbox is the bait. And someone unseen, sitting safely on the shore somewhere on the other side of the world, is trying to hook you and rip you out of your secure environment.
It's a purely predatory metaphor.
It implies that you are swimming in murky waters all day long, and you have to constantly evaluate everything you see. Like, is this a genuine communication from my bank, or is this a lure designed to get my savings account?
It demands a state of constant vigilance.
A low-level paranoia constantly running in the background.
And that paranoia, that relentless vigilance, is cognitively exhausting, which perfectly explains the other half of this B2 analytical vocabulary, the language we use to manage our own tech habits and boundaries.
Because the external threats of hackers are only half the battle?
Exactly. We also have to articulate the internal threats to our own mental health.
Yes. The framework highlights this beautifully. It brings up the struggle to keep up with rapid changes. It talks about the anxiety of monitoring our screen time. And, of course, this massive cultural phenomenon of the digital detox for people who feel genuinely addicted.
You know, I actually have a major issue with the term digital detox.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's a terrible metaphor that fundamentally misrepresents our relationship with modern technology.
I think it perfectly describes the feeling of needing to unplug and get away. Why do you hate it so much?
Because a detox, that is a biological medical term. It's historically reserved for foreign substances.
Right, like a drug detox.
Exactly. You detox from alcohol or heavy metals or some literal poison in your bloodstream. So using that word implies that technology is an invasive, unnatural toxin that is built up in your body. And if you just abstain for a weekend, go to a cabin in the woods, you can cleanse your system and return to some pure natural state.
I see where you're going with this.
But for anyone alive today, especially digital natives, technology isn't a foreign substance you can sweat out. It is their native ecosystem.
It's the air we breathe.
Right. You can't detox from your own environment. It's like a fish trying to detox from water. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay, I hear your point, and it's a strong one, but I have to respectfully disagree on the validity of the metaphor precisely because of the biology you just mentioned.
Okay, lay it on me.
Neuroscience has pretty clearly shown that the dopamine loops created by these variable reward schedules in social media feeds, they function almost exactly like chemical addiction.
The slot machine effect.
Exactly, the slot machine effect. We aren't just talking about a bad habit of checking our phones too much. We are talking about fundamentally altered biochemistry. We use the word detox because turning off a piece of glass and metal literally causes physical withdrawal symptoms in people.
The anxiety of being disconnected.
Right. We are literally talking about technology as if it alters our physical bodies, because it does.
That's a fair counterpoint. The withdrawal is very real. But I still argue that the language of detoxing places the burden entirely on the individual.
Oh, interesting. How so?
It says, you, the user, you consume too much of this toxin, you lack self-control, you need to go to digital rehab.
Ah, I see.
Rather than saying, hey, this environment has been deliberately engineered by trillion-dollar companies to be highly addictive and toxic, and maybe we need to regulate the manufacturers.
Oh, that is such a sharp insight. The language individualizes a systemic problem.
Exactly.
That makes total sense. We use words like screen time as this little personal metric to measure our own exposure, almost like measuring our own radiation dosage.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
We tell ourselves we just need to limit the dose, which completely ignores the fact that entire industries are being, to use a word from the source material, revolutionized by emerging tech like VR and AR all around us.
And look closely at that word. Revolutionized. We throw it around in marketing copy all the time, but it doesn't just mean modified or improved.
No, a revolution is a violent overthrow.
Exactly. A revolution is the violent overthrow of the old order to establish a new one. When we talk about augmented reality or artificial intelligence revolutionizing an industry, we are acknowledging an unstoppable, relentless pace of change that threatens to render us completely obsolete.
Going back to that phrase from the framework, the struggle to keep up with it, it perfectly captures the pure exhaustion of the human user at this level.
We're perpetually behind.
We really are. We are defending our bank accounts from phishing scams. We are defending our dopamine receptors with digital detoxes. And we are defending our very livelihoods from being revolutionized out of existence.
It is a profound baseline state of vulnerability. And when you realize that technology is this invasive force capable of upending global industries and altering human biochemistry, well, your mind is forced to extrapolate.
You can't just stop at the present moment.
No, you can't. The language naturally pushes us toward the ultimate existential questions.
Like, where is this all actually leading? What happens when these tools we are so desperately trying to keep up with suddenly become smarter than we are?
And that profound anxiety, that speculation, propels our discourse into the absolute highest tier of complexity in this entire framework.
The C1, C2 level.
The philosopher tier.
Yeah.
The vocabulary of the singularity and the symbiote.
The shift here is just monumental. I mean, we completely abandon the practical daily concerns of frozen screens and forgotten passwords.
And we leave all that behind.
We enter the realm of pure abstraction, speculative futures, and deep, deep ethical dilemmas.
We are forced to invent language to describe entities and events that do not even exist yet but feel entirely inevitable.
Right, and the framework introduces this by forcing us to distinguish between the AI we currently interact with and the AI we are actively attempting to build. It contrasts narrow AI, which is, task-specific, like a recommendation algorithm on a streaming site or autonomous driving software with AGI.
AGI, artificial general intelligence.
It's a big one.
The hypothetical threshold where a machine possesses human-like cognitive abilities across any and all domains. An intellect that can learn, reason, adapt, and apply knowledge as fluidly as we do, but at processing speeds we cannot possibly comprehend.
And the vocabulary required to discuss AGI is incredibly heavy. We aren't talking about user-friendliness anymore.
No, we are far past that.
We're talking about algorithmic bias.
That's a huge one.
The deeply unsettling realization that if we build a machine mind and we train it on human data, the machine will inevitably inherit and probably amplify our worst human prejudices.
Which raises an important point about the nature of our language here. We are no longer troubleshooting a slow Wi-Fi connection. We are troubleshooting the moral and ethical fabric of a silicon intelligence.
Wow.
We are taking the language of sociology, of human rights, of ethics, and we are applying it directly to code.
And we are applying the language of disaster management to economics.
Yes, the job market.
The framework specifically highlights the economic disruption and the mass job displacement caused by automation. And the verb it uses to describe our response is stunning. It says we need to mitigate it.
To mitigate the disruption.
Yeah.
Mitigate. Mitigate is a profoundly defeatist word in this specific context.
Totally. Think about how we use that word normally. You don't mitigate a beautiful summer day.
No.
You mitigate a hurricane. You mitigate a catastrophic oil spill.
By using the word mitigate in relation to automation and AI, our language implicitly accepts that massive, devastating economic damage is coming like a literal force of nature.
It's unavoidable.
It concedes that we cannot stop the flood. Human society can only stack sandbags and try to soften the blow.
And that flood of exponential technological growth leads us to the most intense esoteric concept in the entire curriculum, the technological singularity.
The singularity. This is where technology, philosophy, and modern theology all intersect.
The framework defines it as a hypothetical point in the future, when technological growth becomes completely uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in totally unforeseeable changes to human civilization.
Unforeseeable being the operative word.
Right. And the source material notes this deep divide in how people view it. Some view this as a utopian dawn, where we solve all disease and poverty, while critics classify it as an existential risk.
An existential risk.
Yeah.
Let that phrase just breathe for a moment.
It's heavy.
It means a literal, credible threat to the continued existence of the human species. I mean, think about the journey we've taken today. We have evolved from asking, how do I turn on the laptop, to asking, will the laptop exterminate humanity?
It's an astronomical linguistic leap in just a few decades. And the specific words surrounding the singularity in this framework, uncontrollable, irreversible, unforeseeable, they all share a common, terrifying theme.
They acknowledge a loss of control.
Completely. They acknowledge a future where human agency is mathematically removed from the equation. At the A2 foundational level, we were the masters commanding the tool. At the C1, C2 level, the tool has become a self-replicating, hyper-intelligent entity, and we are merely the biological ancestors it left behind.
But what's fascinating is that the framework doesn't just leave us in this cold humans versus machines binary. It introduces the vocabulary of the blurred line.
The symbiotic relationship.
Yes, it details the language of transhumanism.
Using technology to fundamentally alter and enhance human intellectual and physical capabilities.
Like brain-computer interfaces.
Right. And the framework uses this incredible phrase that I just cannot stop thinking about. It talks about the concept of offloading cognitive processes to external devices.
Got loading. That is such an industrial metaphor, like a massive cargo ship transferring its heavy freight onto a dock so it can float higher.
Exactly. So, what does this all mean for you, the person listening to this right now? I want you to really think about your smartphone for a second. Think about how many phone numbers or addresses or even just birthdays that you actually have stored in your own biological memory right now.
Probably very few.
20 years ago, you probably had dozens of phone numbers memorized. You had a mental map of your entire city. Today, you might know 2 phone numbers, your own and maybe your partner's. And you use GPS to get to the grocery store.
Because you have taken the biological cognitive process of memorization, of spatial navigation, and you have offloaded it to the silicon memory bank in your pocket.
You have outsourced a piece of your mind.
You literally have.
Which forces a radical, almost uncomfortable question. If you rely on that device as a literal external hard drive for your brain, are you already, practically speaking, a transhumanist?
That's the question.
Is your smartphone literally an external lobe of your brain? Because if I take your phone away from you right now and I drop it in a river, have I essentially given you a localized lobotomy?
Well, you've certainly amputated your access to the collective knowledge of the species.
For sure.
And you've severed your primary means of social connection. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the profound arc of this entire linguistic journey we've just taken.
It really is staggering when you look at it from a bird's eye view, like we just did.
It's a map of our own minds.
We took this curriculum, this multi-tiered map of how to speak about technology, and we watched our own psychology evolve right alongside the vocabulary.
Step by step.
We started with those basic, almost primitive verbs of A2 device usage. Turning things on, plugging them in, clinging to that comfortable illusion that we were the undisputed masters of our digital domain.
With the spatial metaphors of downloading and surfing, keeping us safely on the surface, ignoring the depths.
Then we waded into the B1 intermediate tier. The friction. The sudden realization that the tools break, they crash, they freeze, and they force us to navigate these complex new social environments where our literal reputation depends on following and being followed.
The realization of our deep social dependence on the digital environment.
From there, we had to adopt the B2 analytical defensive strategies.
We had to armor up.
We became paranoid navigators, protecting our identities with cybersecurity, constantly scanning the waters for phishing lures, and prescribing ourselves digital detoxes just to survive the exhausting, revolutionary pace of the ecosystem.
The recognition of the technology as an invasive, sometimes predatory force in our lives.
And finally, we arrived at the C1, C2 philosophical endpoint, the existential vocabulary of AGI, the ethical nightmares of algorithmic bias, the grim acceptance of mitigating job loss, and the ultimate mind-bending reality of transhumanism and the technological singularity.
Where the language itself proved that the line between human biology and machine architecture is rapidly disappearing.
It's all right there in the words we use every day.
And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought, drawn directly from the immense progression we've just explored.
Let's hear it.
Think about the sheer volume of new vocabulary we just discussed. Think about all the concepts, the metaphors, the defensive terms we had to invent. Phishing, digital detox, algorithmic bias, offloading cognition. We had to invent all of that just to articulate our relationship with narrow AI and the relatively basic smartphones we have in our pockets today.
We had to rewrite the English dictionary just to survive the current iteration of the internet.
Precisely. So imagine the completely new, currently unimaginable words we will be forced to invent to describe our reality if we ever actually cross the threshold of the technological singularity.
Oh, wow.
If, as we said at the beginning, our language is how we construct our reality, what will our language even sound like when we are no longer the most intelligent entities in the room?
Will we even possess the cognitive capacity to invent the words, or will the vocabulary of the future belong entirely to the machines?
That is the ultimate question.
Will our language just break down completely? It's an incredibly murky landscape ahead, but you know, that's exactly why we do these deep dives, to try and map the waters before we have to swim in them. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. Keep questioning the words you use, pay close attention to the invisible architecture around you, and we will catch you on the next one.
So usually when we talk about learning a language, there is this expectation of it being purely functional.
Right, like a toolbox.
Exactly. Like a toolbox, you need a hammer, you grab the hammer, you need to order a coffee or, find the bathroom in a foreign country. You just grab the specific vocabulary word for that and boom, transaction complete.
Yeah, it feels very binary, I think. You either know the word for train station or you don't.
Right.
It is basically framed as this logistical exchange, right? Where words are just neutral vehicles carrying our basic physical needs from our brains to the outside world.
But then you step into the world of how language actually shapes human experience, and suddenly that simple toolbox metaphor kind of completely breaks down.
It really does. It falls apart.
Because we're actually looking at a linguistic landscape that is, well, it's the very lens through which we perceive our own reality. The words we possess actually define the boundaries of what we are capable of experiencing.
Which is a huge concept.
It is. And today's source material proves this in a way that, frankly, completely reframes the entire concept of travel. We are looking at a really fascinating transcript from Podzone.
Right, which is an advanced English learning guide hosted by John and Emma.
Yeah, John and Emma. And on the surface, their transcript just appears to be this straightforward educational guide on, like, how to talk about travel.
It just categorizes vocabulary by fluency levels.
Right. But beneath that surface, it reveals this profound psychological progression.
Absolutely.
And that is the core mission of our deep dive today. So to you listeners, this isn't just an English lesson. We are exploring how the language we use entirely shapes and in many ways actually limits the experiences we have.
We are going to track the evolution of travel vocabulary across 4 distinct fluency levels.
Yeah, starting from the foundational A2 level and then moving up through B1 and B2, all the way to the highly advanced C1 and C2 levels.
And by doing that, we are going to discover how moving from, basic logistics to deep philosophy changes the very nature of a journey.
Because observing these language levels is kind of like observing the evolution of a traveler's mindset, right?
Exactly. We are watching the progression from mere survival and logistical navigation all the way to profound self-reflection and global awareness.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because every journey has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Both physically, when you step out your front door, and linguistically, when you first start learning how to speak.
The ground floor.
The ground floor. Our source begins at the A2 level. And according to John and Emma, this level is all about the foundational scaffolding of travel. It is the basic who, what, where, and when.
Which makes sense. I mean, let's think about the cognitive state of someone operating strictly at this level.
Right.
You land in a foreign city, you are tired, you're disoriented, and your primary goal isn't self-actualization.
No, definitely not.
It is purely about not getting lost and finding a place to sleep.
Yeah, the language reflects that immediate, pressing need. It is the bare minimum required to navigate moving a physical body from point A to point B.
The source material highlights basic nouns and verbs here. Things like going on vacation, taking a holiday, or taking a trip.
Taking a trip, yeah.
And it covers the absolute basics of transportation. To travel by plane, train, bus, or car.
There's zero room for abstraction here. You are identifying a physical location, a method of transit, and a physical structure to sleep in.
Right. The source also focuses heavily on intention and immediate future plans. Like Emma and John point out phrases like want to and going to.
As in, I want to go to Spain.
Yes, or next year I'm going to visit Paris.
And then you have the basic activities and accommodations. You go to the beach, you swim, visit museums, see the sights, take photos. And at the end of the day, you stay in a hotel, a hostel, or an apartment.
Look at the utilitarian nature of this language. It is entirely action-oriented.
Utilitarian is a good word for it.
John actually provides an example in the transcript of recounting a trip to Italy using strictly A2 vocabulary.
Oh yeah, I remember this part.
He says he went on holiday to Italy by plane. He visited Rome, he saw the Colosseum, he stayed in a small hotel, took many photos, and now he wants to go to the beach next.
It's just a sequence of events.
Exactly. And the grammatical structure is vital to analyze here. At this level, the traveler exists purely in basic timelines. We have what was done in the past, like I saw the Colosseum.
Right.
And future intentions, like I want to go to the beach.
There is zero capacity to describe the nuanced internal experience of the present moment. You are essentially acting as a news reporter for your own physical movements.
A news reporter, yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It makes me think of an analogy. A2 vocabulary is kind of like a stick figure drawing of a trip.
Oh, I like that. Let's explore that visual a bit.
Well, a stick figure gets the universal point across, right? You look at it, and you know it's a person standing next to a triangle, which represents a mountain.
Right. Anyone in the world can understand a stick figure drawing.
Exactly. It's effective for survival.
Yeah.
But it lacks all nuance, all shadow, all depth, all color.
It's very flat.
Yeah, so my question is, If we only have the words to describe seeing the Colosseum and staying in a hotel, does it restrict our actual memory of the trip?
That's interesting.
Like when we go home and try to remember the experience, does our brain just encode the memory as a basic checklist of actions? Because those are literally the only mental files we have available to sort the experience into.
What's fascinating here is that while it seems restrictive, this foundational vocabulary actually acts as a universal passport.
How so?
Because without these basic concrete blocks, I mean, the hotel, the plane, the train, the past tense, the future intention, none of the higher level philosophical travel concepts we're going to discuss later can even occur.
Oh, right. You have to get there first.
Exactly. You cannot have a profound journey of self-discovery if you cannot figure out how to book the bus ticket to get to the mountain in the first place.
That makes total sense.
The stick figure has to exist before you can paint the masterpiece. It is the necessary logistical grounding that allows for later cognitive flight.
Okay, so you have to survive the logistics before you can enjoy the aesthetics. I like that.
Very well said.
But once those basic needs are met, meaning we have successfully procured the hotel and the plane ticket using our A2 language, the human brain gets restless. We get bored of simply surviving.
I always do.
We transition from merely enduring a trip to actually curating and describing it. And this is where John and Emma introduce the B1 level, the B1 Explorer.
The language shifts dramatically at this stage. We move away from simple physical survival and enter the realm of preparation, description, and emotion.
Which is a huge jump.
It is. The source material outlines the B1 planning phase. We are no longer just taking a trip. We are booking flights and accommodation. We are applying for a visa, doing research, and exchanging currency.
Let's isolate that word research for a second. That word represents a massive cognitive leap from A2.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you aren't just pointing at a map and saying, I want to go to Spain. You are actively engaging with the idea of the destination. Before you even arrive, you are building a mental model.
Right, and then when you do arrive, the descriptive language completely changes the reality of the traveler.
John and Emma highlight a major shift toward powerful adjectives here.
Yeah.
We stop saying a place is just good or nice.
We describe a view as breathtaking.
Breathtaking, yes. Yeah. A city is vibrant and lively. A town is charming and picturesque.
The introduction of adjectives is crucial because it represents the introduction of internal, subjective experience into the travel narrative.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, an A2 traveler says, I saw the mountain. A B1 traveler says, the mountain was breathtaking.
Wow, yeah, the difference is stark.
Breathtaking is a physiological response. It implies that the landscape acted upon the traveler, causing an emotional and physical reaction. It is no longer just a transaction, It is an interaction.
And the source gives us phrases specifically designed for sharing these curated experiences with others, which introduces this whole social element.
Yes, exactly.
A key phrase they point out is, the highlight of the trip was. John uses the example of seeing the Egyptian pyramids as a highlight.
Mm-hmm.
And you aren't just eating food to survive until dinner anymore. You are trying local cuisine.
The B1 level also allows us to categorize our intentions. We're no longer just going on a generic vacation.
Right.
The transcript shows we can now choose between a relaxing beach holiday, an adventurous backpacking trip, a quick city break, or an all-inclusive resort. We are tailoring the experience to our specific psychological desires.
And Emma provides a really good example of this in the source, doesn't she?
She does. She details a 3-week backpacking trip to Thailand. And she explicitly mentions that they only booked the first flight and hostel so they could remain flexible.
Ah, flexibility. Very B1.
Right. And the rest of the trip culminated in visiting an elephant sanctuary surrounded by breathtaking landscapes.
Let's analyze that planning phase for a minute. Yeah. Words like visa, currency, and research, they introduce the concept of anticipation into the travel experience.
That's a great point.
The trip no longer begins when you arrive at the destination. The trip begins in your mind weeks or months in advance as you gather information and handle logistics.
You are actively building a mental model of the destination before your feet ever touch the ground. You are setting expectations.
But here's where it gets really interesting. I mean, B1 kind of feels like the Instagram level of language, right?
The Instagram level.
Yeah. If we are armed with all these highly descriptive, slightly romanticized words like breathtaking, picturesque, vibrant, does learning this specific vocabulary force us to artificially curate our trips?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like if I know the phrase the highlight of the trip was, my brain might automatically start hunting for that one specific highlight, discarding the rest of the messy, uncurated reality of the journey.
Right, right.
Are we just trying to build a perfectly captioned photo album in our heads rather than experiencing the trip as a whole continuous event?
This raises an incredibly important question about how language dictates perception, which is a concept known in linguistics as linguistic relativity.
Wait, before we go further, break down linguistic relativity for me. How does a word actually change what I see with my own eyes?
Well, in simple terms, linguistic relativity suggests that the structure of a language affects its speaker's worldview or cognition.
Okay.
Having specific descriptive words for things actually tunes the traveler's brain to seek out and appreciate those specific qualities.
So it changes what you focus on.
Exactly. If you only have the word food, you look for calories. If you learn the term local cuisine, you are no longer just looking for sustenance.
You want an experience.
Your brain is now actively scanning the environment for a culinary experience that is distinct to that specific geographic region. The vocabulary word creates a completely new category of value in your mind.
That is so wild. The word itself is almost like a metal detector.
A metal detector.
Once you have it, you start pinging every time you walk past a street food vendor instead of just walking blindly into a familiar fast food chain.
And knowing the word vibrant means you are more likely to notice and appreciate the chaotic energy of a busy street market, rather than just feeling overwhelmed by the noise and the crowds.
It reframes the chaos.
It does. The language turns what could be a generic, slightly stressful physical movement through space into a vivid, emotive memory. It gives you the framework to synthesize sensory input into a meaningful narrative.
It is genuinely incredible to consider that acquiring a few adjectives can literally alter sensory processing.
It's powerful stuff.
But, human nature never stops there.
Never.
Once we learn how to beautifully describe our curated trips, we inevitably notice that millions of other people are curating the exact same trips.
Right. We want to be special.
We start seeking differentiation. We want our experiences to mean something unique to us. And this drives us to the third evolution in the source material, which is the B2 analyst.
This is a profound behavioral shift. At the B1 level, travelers function mostly as storytellers. At the B2 level, language is weaponized, in a sense, to define our actual identity as travelers.
Weaponized identity. I love that.
So vocabulary becomes analytical, critical, and highly aware of our relationship to the environment and to other people.
And the transcript introduces a massive dichotomy here, which really serves as the primary engine of B2 travel vocabulary. It's the great debate. The tourist versus the traveler.
Oh, yes. It is a distinction heavily laden with social and cultural weight. The source outlines the parameters very clearly.
What are they?
Well, the tourist is associated with popular sites, guided tours, generic chain hotels, and packed itineraries. It is safe, it's efficient, and it's highly organized.
Right. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the traveler.
The traveler.
The traveler has a loose or rough itinerary. They stay in a family-run guest house. They pride themselves on spontaneity.
Crucially, the traveler seeks to get off the beaten path.
Ah, off the beaten path.
Yes, that specific idiom is a hallmark of B2 language. It signifies a deliberate movement away from the centralized, commodified zones of tourism and into the perceived authenticity of the margins.
They actively engage with the friction of the experience. The source talks about the challenges of cultural immersion, specifically culture shock, and the language barrier.
Which can be so daunting.
Yeah, John and Emma discuss overcoming that language barrier, using gestures, getting frustrated but pushing through it anyway. There's also this B2 phrasal verb they mention, soaking up the atmosphere.
I love that phrase.
It means enjoying a place without doing any specific activities, just sitting in a plaza and absorbing the vibe.
We see this identity fully realized in the source dialogue when Emma explicitly rejects a friend's organized European bus tour.
Oh yeah, she was not having it.
She says it's efficient, sure, but it completely avoids immersion. She proudly claims the identity of the traveler who prefers a loose itinerary and actively wants to overcome language barriers.
Let's pause on that idea of the language barrier and culture shock. Why would a human being actively seek out frustration?
It seems counterintuitive.
Because at the A2 and B1 levels, the entire goal was to make the trip as smooth and easy as possible, right? You book the all-inclusive resort, so you don't have to worry about cooking or cleaning. You seek comfort.
The psychology behind embracing culture shock and the language barrier is fundamentally about embracing friction.
Friction.
Yes. Early level travelers seek ease and comfort. They want the friction removed. But B2 travelers realize that friction is where heat is generated.
Wow.
Friction is the exact point where the boundary between the self and the foreign environment dissolves. They use this vocabulary to actively seek out differences, disorientation, and discomfort, because overcoming that discomfort is what proves their identity as a true traveler.
They have to earn it.
Exactly. The difficulty becomes the currency of the experience. You cannot prove your adaptability if you are never forced to adapt.
I understand the mechanism, but I have to play devil's advocate regarding this whole tourist versus traveler debate.
Go for.
When I look at phrases like getting off the beaten path, I sense a heavy dose of snobbery embedded in this B2 vocabulary. It borders on elitism.
The performative nature of B2 language can certainly carry an elitist undertone.
It sets up a hierarchy. It implies, you stayed at a chain hotel and saw the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
How mundane. I stayed in a drafty guest house and got lost in an alleyway. Therefore, my experience is superior.
I see your point.
Is striving to get off the beaten path really about deep cultural immersion, or is it just a different, slightly more pretentious kind of checklist? We're just trading the A2 checklist of famous monuments for a B2 checklist of obscure coffee shops and language barrier struggles.
Yeah.
The mechanism is exactly the same. We're just chasing different trophies.
That's a really sharp critique. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying drive behind this B2 vocabulary is actually quite profound, even if it sometimes manifests as pretension.
Oh, so?
The desire to stay in a family-run guest house rather than a chain hotel, or the goal to sit in a plaza and just soak up the atmosphere rather than ticking items off a packed itinerary. These linguistic choices represent a deep human need for genuine connection.
A need to connect with the humanity of the place, rather than just consuming its infrastructure.
Exactly. Because a chain hotel and a packed tour bus offer the illusion of being somewhere else, but they wrap the traveler in a protective, homogenized bubble of efficiency that prevents actual contact.
Right. The environment is temperature controlled, the food is standardized, the interactions are completely scripted.
The B2 vocabulary is an attempt to pierce that bubble. It is the language of someone trying to strip away the commercialization of travel to find a raw human interaction underneath. They want to be affected by the place, not just pass through it without leaving a footprint.
That completely reframes the snobbery into something much more vulnerable, honestly.
It is vulnerable.
It is a desperate attempt to feel something real in an increasingly packaged world.
Exactly.
Which transitions us perfectly into the final, most complex evolution in the Podzone transcript. Once we master our personal travel identity, once we figure out how to be this rugged, immersive traveler, our awareness inevitably expands outward.
We start seeing the bigger picture.
We cannot focus solely on our own friction anymore. We have to reckon with the friction we cause the world. And this brings us to the C1, C2 philosopher.
This is where language reaches its maximum capacity for abstraction and systemic thinking.
This is the top tier.
At the C1 and C2 levels, travel is no longer viewed merely as an individual consumer choice or a personal adventure. It is understood as a massive, complex, global phenomenon with severe, real-world consequences.
Yeah, the vocabulary shifts from personal logistics and identity politics to global ethics and existential philosophy.
The source material dives straight into the ethics of travel here. We are introduced to terms like sustainable tourism and ecotourism.
The focus shifts entirely to having a low environmental impact and actively benefiting local communities rather than just extracting experiences from them.
Right. The traveler is now calculating their carbon footprint before even booking the flight.
It demands a really high level of critical thinking. And alongside the idealism of sustainable tourism, the C1, C2 language forces us to confront the darker, more destructive side of our desire to see the world.
It does.
The source highlights the concept of over-tourism and its detrimental effects. It explicitly mentions cities like Venice and Barcelona, places that are actively struggling, and in some cases collapsing, beneath the sheer weight of global visitors.
And the word detrimental carries so much weight there.
It really does.
It implies that our very presence, the thing we thought was so culturally enlightened and brave back at the B2 level, might actually be destroying the thing we came to love.
Which is a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the most fascinating, complex concept in the entire transcript. John and Emma unpack the idea of authenticity versus a tourist trap.
This is a fantastic section.
They use an incredibly specific, highly advanced word to describe what happens when a destination tries to fake authenticity for tourists. They call it a pastiche of authenticity.
Pastiche is an exceptional word choice to analyze.
Break it down for us.
Originally, it's an art term. A pastiche is a work that imitates the style or character of the work of one or more other artists. It often celebrates the original, but is inherently a fabrication.
Oh, okay.
So in the context of travel, a pastiche of authenticity describes an environment that has been carefully constructed to look and feel authentic to a visitor, but is entirely staged for their consumption.
It is the village that puts away its smartphones, hides its modern appliances, and puts on traditional clothing from 200 years ago, strictly between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. when the tour buses arrive.
Exactly.
They're performing their own heritage.
And the C1, C2 language grapples with these agonizing systemic contradictions. I mean, the traveler uses fossil fuels, contributing to a massive carbon footprint in order to fly across the world to engage in ecotourism to appreciate pristine nature.
It's a complete paradox.
Or, even more devastatingly, our collective B2 desire to get off the beaten path eventually paves that path.
Wow, yes.
The influx of travelers leads to over-tourism, which prices locals out of their own neighborhoods and ruins the untouched cultures we were seeking. The local economy then adapts to survive, replacing genuine culture with a pastiche designed to extract our money while simulating the authenticity we crave.
We literally destroy the thing by observing it.
It's the observer effect applied to global tourism.
The source also touches on the philosophical identity of the traveler at this level. You aren't just a traveler anymore. You are a globetrotter driven by wanderlust.
Wanderlust being that deep, almost painful, incurable urge to explore and seek the unknown.
John and Emma conclude with what they call the ultimate C1, C2 metaphor. They describe travel as a daunting prospect of leaving one's comfort zone. It ceases to be a geographic movement through physical space and functions entirely as a journey of self-discovery.
The goal isn't to escape life, but to find life.
This represents the total internalization of the travel experience. The external destination becomes almost secondary to the internal psychological landscape.
It does.
So what does this all mean? Let's zero in on this pastiche of authenticity for a second. If we have reached this hyper-aware C2 level of analysis, and we realize that a whole village might just be perfectly staged for us to feel like we're having a genuine interaction. Isn't that just a theme park?
It certainly feels like one.
How does a globetrotter, burdened with all this intellectual awareness, ever know what is actually real anymore? If we assume every local smile is a transaction, does authentic travel even exist, or have we just completely ruined the globe with our wanderlust?
That is the existential crisis of the modern traveler right there.
It's bleak.
However, if we tie the concept of the pastiche back to the idea of wanderlust and the daunting prospect of stepping out of your comfort zone, a very beautiful resolution emerges.
Oh, thank goodness. What is it?
The realization that external authenticity might be totally impossible to find, that everywhere is either commodified, a tourist trap, or a pastiche. That realization is exactly the catalyst that turns travel into a true journey of self-discovery.
Wait, explain the mechanism there. How does realizing everything is fake lead to self-discovery?
Well, when you realize the external world cannot provide you with a perfectly pure, untouched, authentic experience, you are forced to look inward.
Whoa.
The authentic experience is no longer located in the village or the ruins or the family-run guest house. The authenticity is located in your reaction to being totally out of your element.
That makes a lot of sense.
The discomfort is real. The confusion of navigating a foreign transit system is real. The internal realization of how small you are in the world or how adaptable you can be under pressure, that is real.
So the external world might be a stage, a beautifully crafted pastiche, but your internal growth upon that stage is entirely genuine.
Precisely. You don't travel to find an authentic place. You travel to find an authentic version of yourself by stripping away the comforts of home.
And language allows us to articulate that internal shift. That is the highest purpose of the C1, C2 vocabulary. It gives us the tools to process our own evolution.
It's incredibly empowering.
To synthesize this massive linguistic journey, we started all the way back at the A2 Foundation, where language is just the logistical scaffolding. We learned the vocabulary to simply want to take a trip book a hotel, and take photos.
It was our stick figure drawing, providing the basic framework for survival and movement.
From there, we evolved to the B1 level. We added adjectives and emotion. We sought a breathtaking highlight and explored local cuisine.
We began curating our memories, using words as metal detectors to find specific subjective experiences.
Then we stepped up to B2, where travel became an identity. We analyzed ourselves, trying to avoid being a generic tourist so we could be a rugged traveler, desperately trying to get off the beaten path to find real connection through the friction of culture shock.
Finally, we ascended to the C1, C2 level, carrying the heavy ethical weight of our choices. We debated the systemic impacts of over-tourism, calculated our carbon footprint, and searched for meaning in a world of pastiche, ultimately realizing the journey was an internal journey of self-discovery.
To you, the listener, we want you to evaluate your own conversations. The next time you plan a trip, or the next time you tell a friend about a vacation, which level are you operating on?
Are you building an A2 stick figure of what you did and what you ate?
Or are you engaging in a C2 exploration of how that trip impacted you and the place you visited? Having the right words fundamentally upgrades the way you are capable of experiencing the world.
A richer vocabulary directly correlates to a richer, more nuanced capacity to process your own life.
We want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over, something that builds directly on the themes of today's deep dive.
We spent significant time analyzing the C2 realization that external authenticity is incredibly difficult to find in an era of global tourism.
Right.
But consider this. If the absolute highest level of travel is ultimately an internal journey of self-discovery where we step out of our comfort zone, does it actually matter if the external destination turns out to be a pastiche of authenticity?
I mean, if you travel to a completely staged tourist trap, but being there, thousands of miles from home, sparks genuine, profound internal growth and shifts your perspective on your own life, wasn't the trip still profoundly, undisputedly real?
It really is a question of where the journey actually takes place, on the map or in the mind.